everyone, it's Ms. Spencer. Today we're going to be multiplying and dividing decimals. The objective for today is that students will be able to multiply and divide decimals to the thousands place. Let's start with some vocabulary. Here we have 6 tenths times 4 tenths. Both numbers that you multiply together in a multiplication sentence are known as factors. The answer to a multiplication sentence is known as the product. We can rewrite both of these factors so that it says 6 tenths times 4 tenths. When we write out the place value, this is known as unit form. We'll be using unit form today to help us multiply. So let's start with 6 tenths times 4 tenths. The first thing we're going to do is rewrite each factor in unit form. Here we have 6 tenths times 4 tenths. We put the digit and then wrote out the place value that digit is in. Next, we're going to multiply the whole numbers. 6 times 4 equals 24. Now we're going to multiply the place values. Tenths times tenths is hundredths. You can think about it as 10 times 10 equals 100. You can also think about it as fractions. 1 tenth times 1 tenth. With multiplying, you multiply the numerators or the numbers on top. 1 times 1 equals 1. And then you multiply the denominators. 10 times 10 equals 100. So tenths times tenths equals hundredths. Now we're going to rewrite the product in standard form. 24 hundredths can be written as 0.24 hundredths. The 4 is in the hundredths place and the 2 is in the tenths place. 6 tenths times 4 tenths equals 24 hundredths. Now let's try multiplying 7 times 5 hundredths. First, we're going to rewrite each factor in unit form. The 7 is in the ones place, so we have 7 ones, and the 5 is in the hundredths place, so we have 5 hundredths. Now we're going to multiply the whole numbers. 7 times 5 equals 35. Next, we're multiplying the place values. Ones times hundredths equals hundredths because anytime you multiply a number by 1, it's the other factor, just like 1 times 100 equals 100. Another way you can think about it is with fractions. 1 times 100th equals 100th. So we have 35 hundredths. Finally, we're going to rewrite the product in standard form. 35 hundredths can be written with a 5 in the hundredths place and a 3 in the tenths place. 7 times 5 hundredths equals 35 hundredths. Now let's multiply 3 and 2 hundredths times 1 and 4 tenths. The first thing we're going to do is rewrite each factor in unit form. So we have 302 hundredths because the 2 is in the hundredths place. We're going to multiply by 14 tenths because the 4 is in the tenths place. Now we're going to multiply the whole numbers. 302 times 14 equals 4,228. Next, we're going to multiply the place values. Hundredths times tenths. Well, if you think about it, 100 times 10 is 1,000, so hundredths times tenths is thousandths. Another way to think of it is fractions. 1/100th times 1/10. You can multiply the numerators, 1 times 1 is 1, and then multiply the denominators, 100 times 10 is 1,000. So hundredths times tenths is thousandths. 4,228 thousandths. Finally, we're going to rewrite the product in standard form. So because we have 4,228 thousandths, the 8 is going to go in the thousands place, the 2 is in the hundredths, the other 2 is in the tenths, and the 4 is in the ones place. 3 and 2 hundredths times 1 and 4 tenths is 4 and 228 thousandths. Now let's do the vocabulary for division. The first number that we have in a division sentence is known as our dividend. This is the amount that we're splitting up. The second number is known as our divisor. This tells us the number of groups or the amount in each group. The answer to a division problem is known as the quotient. Just like multiplication, we can rewrite both of these numbers, the dividend and the divisor, in unit form. This is where we write the digits and the place value that the last digit is in. We're going to be using unit form to help us divide. So let's start by dividing 2 and 4 tenths divided by 6 tenths. The first thing we're going to do is rewrite the dividend and divisor in unit form. Here we have 24 tenths because the 4 is in the tenths place, divided by 6 tenths because the 6 is in the tenths place. Now we're going to start by dividing the whole numbers. 24 divided by 6 equals 4. Next, we're going to divide the place values. Tenths divided by tenths equals 1. You can think about it, whenever you divide any number by itself, the answer is always 1, just like 10 divided by 10 equals 1. So 2 and 4 tenths divided by 6 tenths is 4. Now let's divide 3 and 5 tenths divided by 5 hundredths. The first thing we're going to do is rewrite the dividend and divisor in unit form. Here we have 35 tenths because the 5 is in the tenths place, divided by 5 hundredths because the 5 is in the hundredths place. Next, we want to rewrite the dividend so that the dividend and divisor have the same units. Notice in our dividend, we have tenths, and in our divisor, we have hundredths. Well, what we can do is we can rewrite the dividend, or this first number that we're dividing, so that we also include the hundredths place. In 3 and 5 tenths, notice there isn't anything in the hundredths place. That just means there's 0 hundredths. So, and in the entire number, 3 and 5 tenths is equal to 350 hundredths. The 5 hundredths can stay the same because it's already in the hundredths place. Now that we have the same units or the same place values, we're going to divide whole numbers. 350 divided by 5 equals 70. Next, we're going to divide the place values. Hundredths divided by hundredths equals ones. Finally, we're going to rewrite the quotient in standard form. 70 ones equals 70. So 3 and 5 tenths divided by 5 hundredths equals 70. Now let's divide 48 divided by 12 hundredths. First thing we're going to do is rewrite the dividend and divisor in unit form. We have 48 ones because the 8 is in the ones place, and 12 hundredths because the 2 is in the hundredths place. Now we're going to rewrite the dividend so that the dividend and divisor have the same units. So their divisor is in the hundredths place. So we want to rewrite 48 ones in hundredths. Notice here we have 48. There's no tenths and there's no hundredths. But just because those are blank just means that there's 0 tenths and 0 hundredths. So we can insert those zeros into the tenths and hundredths place. Now looking at the whole number, we can see that there is 4,800 hundredths. So we have 4,800 hundredths divided by 12 hundredths. Now that they have the same unit or place value, we can divide the whole numbers. 4,800 divided by 12 equals 400. Next, let's divide the place values. Hundredths divided by hundredths equals ones. So 48 divided by 12 hundredths equals 400.